Okay, love and light, everybody. Hope you're feeling balanced and beautiful today. You might need it, man. We're going to talk about one of the greatest confusions that has ever been pulled on the human race. So make sure you are nice and present, relax, take your breaths for that relaxation, for that focus. Make sure the space is clear and you can actually receive the message. Hold all judgments to the end of the video. Otherwise, you may miss the point of the video and the messages because there's so much to unpack in this one video. It really is. And so, make sure you're present, man. Not thinking about the bills that's due, not thinking about what your friend just told you last night, those wedding plans, whatever. Let's just focus on the moment for now and let's go ahead and set the foundation, okay? So the goal is to clear minds, to liberate, like truthfully, and get people socially active with proper concepts because, I keep talking about the words and the language and the words are spells. So like if you're talking, you're casting spells on people. If you're speaking and using certain tones, vibrations, that is spells. That's what it is. Now, there's good spells and there's bad spells. But the land itself has been in darkness for so long, meaning that there's still so much to be uncovered about truth, about what's really been happening and what's really been going on. I mean, you still got people who, they don't even they still into conspiracy. Some people still think conspiracy theories are not real and they call them theories, even though that's a CIA word right there. But whatever the case, here's a maxim of truth. When the land is dark, evil and ignorance persists, meaning lies live in the dark. Like they don't like the truth. And there's a lot of truth in light. So when you're in the dark, it allows truth to be faltered. It allows lies to be just spread around the land and run rampant. And it's really up to us because you see a lot of people, it's like they think just because they know that there's the truth, that they can just ignore the lie. But the lie is still existing somewhere unless you truthfully eradicate it, unless you truthfully purge it and deal with it, right? So here's an example of that. These titles that we use all the time, like I'm saying with the words, right? And no disrespect to anybody. No disrespect to anybody, but we have to really understand what we mean when we use this colloquial language that we always use. And we have to really denote things sometimes. There's a time and a place to use connotative language. So, like, I believe that when we speak to each other, since I know we're always filling each other out, we, for the most part, understand what the person is meaning or trying to say, even if they don't always use the proper words. But in some texts and in some cases, not using the proper language has serious consequences, right? And that's like this whole Indian thing that's been, running rampant since 1492. It's a title, it's a brand. So even though you can acknowledge your Indian descent, you have to pay homage to your proper ancestry because the whole thing about the Indian and the titles, those are tags, they're brands. They're titles that were given to those groups of people. So they're not the original name of those people. And, like I'm saying, these things have serious ramifications because when you go around calling yourself something like an Indian, that gives them personam jurisdiction, that gives them territorial jurisdiction, and that gives them subject matter jurisdiction over you. So depending on the context of how you're using that, you may not want to use it because remember when they came and visited these places, even in India itself, like they didn't call, nobody called themselves that till certain European families came there. And that was a way for them, it was a way for them to feel more comfortable in doing business with the individual because for you to call yourself Indian, that's like your name Chris and I'm from another culture and I'm gonna say, yeah, this my friend Abdul. And that's just would be disrespectful to you, to your mother who named you. And you have to understand why they would do that. It would be to make them more comfortable in dealing with you. So the whole Indian thing was to make sure that they were dealing with somebody who's been pacified and what they would call civilized. And anybody who didn't accept that title was considered a savage, somebody who you couldn't do business with. So when you accept that title, you're letting them know who and what you are. You're letting them know the state of mind you're in. And that's important to know because, again, the fact that these titles were even given to us in the first place, the moment you look into them, you realize that it's a lie upon any examination. Like, you're not really these names and these titles that they give you, but we're dealing with a psychological problem. It's called disassociation. It's what happens in psychology when something hurts you, it injures you. It's normal for you to disassociate from it. So we've been hurt so long for being ourselves, for being who we are, for doing what we naturally wanted to do for so long, that we have disassociated from our history of ourselves, of who we truly are. We've disassociated from those titles and those ways of life because they were not conducive to the new system that was going in. So we had to, a lot of people had to leave their titles in order to basically make other people comfortable living around them. And that's important to know, because the way they do it, again, it's through this education they keep giving us, which is training for animals. And we need people to be erudite, given proper erudition on these type of matters, so that way when we link up and we group up, we can actually do progressive things in society, because we have to live in these societies nowadays. So let's be socially progressive and socially active with proper concepts, so that way when we link up, we can get something done. The only thing that's holding us back from that really is the dark priesthood. And notice I say dark, because there's nothing wrong with religion. There's nothing wrong with priests. There's nothing wrong with none of that good stuff. All that stuff is good. There's plenty of great texts out there that give you valuable and beautiful information and knowledge of self. The only thing that's happening is there's this dark priesthood that keeps hiding behind the name of things, right? And remember, the devil talks in a forked tongue. So a lot of the things that they give us is duplicitous in nature. Like, as an example, God, right? It's a reason why God spelled backwards is dog. Man's best friend, loyal, trainable, teachable, protector, guardian. It's a reason why all this stuff persists in the realm. Like, it's like numbers. Everything has an order, a sequence, and you can you can definitely calculate everything if you know the numbers you're working with. So the whole thing about it, these people, they know a lot of numbers. Like, they even talk in numbers and symbolism sometimes, and they know that we are human transceivers. That's what your body is. But you're supposed to be giving yourself the electrical jolts. You're supposed to be giving yourself the transmissions that allow your body to move the way it is. But if you're not giving yourself these electrical pulses, the stimuli, the nervous system, then something else is going to be giving you that. And so therefore, since we've been receiving stimuli from outside of ourselves for so long, we've now begun to spread dogma amongst one another in the name of religion. One more time, we keep spreading dogma to one another in the name of religion. But one thing about it, man, when God unfolds, or rather when man unfolds, his God unfolds as well. And we're coming to a time now where people are going to really have to start proving these guys that they keep talking about. Like the ones that everybody's always claiming, and even the little special ones that nobody knows about. All that has to end as far as falsehood goes. So that means that when it comes to these guys that you call on them and nobody's answering, all that has to be proven from now on. The time is coming for you to prove all that. And so, hopping into this, man, I want you to keep two things in mind. That's oblation and etimon. Oblation and etimon. So oblation is what? Oblation is a thing that is offered or presented to God or a god. And in the context of this conversation, think of fire, something sacrificed with fire, right? Oblation. And the other thing is etimon. Has anybody heard of that? Etimon is basically the origins of words. It's a word or morpheme from which a later word is derived. So that basically is the transliteration of how words come from. Like nice back in the day was Nesius or something like that, one of them. But the point is, they get transliterated over time, but they keep their same meanings for the most part. And at the root of all of the transliterations is the root meaning that all of the words are deriving themselves from. So, keeping etimon in mind, let's unpack the word God. Now, does anybody know what a mantra is? A mantra is a word that's repeated, the tone and vibration repeated over and over again for a specific result. Like those monks, those from Tibet, from Nepal, all these places where they just sit crisscross and they just repeat the same word over and over and over again. What is that doing? What is that doing? Well, if you know anything about cymatics, every sound has a shape, has a color, has a frequency. So you can even heal yourself through tones and words and vibrations. This is why when somebody's sick, you like to sing happy songs to them because it's literally recalibrating their frequencies. Your organs are always listening. I mean, it's even called organs, right? Organs, tones, vibrations, frequencies. And so these tones that we keep saying from time to time, they get transliterated over time. Like God isn't the first transliteration of that energy or that frequency, right? That's a later word because that's an English word. And English is only like 700 years old. So what were people saying when they meant the word God back in the day is the question, right? And this is very similar as far as the transliteration to, as an example, shalom in Hebrew. That means what? Shalom alaikum. Peace be upon you. Aramaic, assalamu alaikum. That means peace be upon you. Presently, in English, we have Islam, and Islam means peace. Now, if you know that back in the day, they didn't even really use vowels, that should be clear because Islam, Aslam, it's all the same thing. It's just taking the vowel. The vowel's the feeling behind the word. But this is how you know Islam means peace. You're even saying it when you say Assalam. You say it slightly. Just like Aleph is Elif. You say the I and the L when you say that, right? So God is good. We say that all the time, and we don't know how true that statement is, that God really is good. But the problem with this statement is that everybody has a preference on what is good to them. So something that's good to you isn't going to necessarily be good to the next person, and vice versa. What people think is bad to them, it might be good for you. It might not hurt them, but then it's hurting you. And this confusion of words that we've brought up has come from the fact that in earlier traditions, right? Because remember, this is new language, new cultures, all this type of stuff. So a big part of the confusion comes into the fact that in earlier traditions, they spoke of a personal relationship with nature, but an impersonal relationship with God. But again, a personal relationship with the nature that God created. And today it's flipped. It's the opposite. People are into a personal relationship with God, but then most people have an impersonal relationship with the nature that He created. And when I say the nature He created, that includes human being nature, their behavior, their nature. That includes Mother Nature, animal nature. Nature itself is God's creations, right? And this really could get to be a problem after a while if the relationship with God is so personal and you have no personal relationships with the nature that He created, because you're still in nature. So you have to go out and interact with the nature that God created. So if you don't understand it, that could put you in some type of shell in your mind because you have this personal relationship. And the whole thing about it, if God created all of us, of course, like you shouldn't, we always say that as far as your children go, you shouldn't necessarily have favorites. Like they're all your beautiful creations, just displaying themselves in different manners, different personalities. But you shouldn't have some personal favoritism over any of your children, which is why, in my opinion, I think that whole logic is just a little flawed. Like we shouldn't have this personal relationship. We should have an impersonal, but still be able to connect, right? Now, on top of all of that, these characters that they keep saying, these characters are really just characters that are identifiable in you. Like you have a Moses in you, you have a Jesus in you. That's why the spirit of Jesus gets in you. But there's multiple spirits, right? So you're supposed to have a Moses spirit inside of you, a leadership quality. You're supposed to have an Isaac spirit. All these things are characters. And I'm not doubting that there were real people. Like I knew Abraham. you know? So like these are real characters throughout time, of course, but the core of all of this, and for it to actually be something worth merit and it to be replete, it would have to go beyond anthropomorphism. It would have to go beyond having characters added to the story, and it would have to have a story within itself that resonates with the inside of you. Okay? So if we're looking at the word God, let's look at the etymology of where this word's coming from. It says God, Old English, God, supreme deity, the Christian God. Okay, so we already getting specific with the cultures, but keeping it going. Image of a God, God-like person. Proto-Germanic Gutan. Old High German, Gott, German, Gott. Old Norse, Gup. Proto-Indo-European, Gut. That which is invoked. Gott. Okay, Slavonic zovo, to call. Sanskrit, Huta, invoked. An epithet of Indra. To call, to invoke. Okay. Okay. Now, if you know what the word got is, like I got something, that actually should let you know everything that you need to know about this God and this deity and all this stuff that we keep saying. Because remember, God has names, but it's an ineffable name. Like you're not supposed to say it, but there's this mystery word that encompasses what we're talking about called God, right? But then the older words for it is got. In fact, if you know the spiritualness behind the word Yeshua, it should tell you exactly what we're talking about from there as well. These are all symbols of things, but the thing about symbols and what they do with symbols, remember, they speak in symbols. Like they always have these codes, these pictures, these images that they show up to people and to themselves mainly to communicate. And one thing about symbols, like you got to know what that is, like words themselves, right? Words are made up of letters, but letters is symbol, like the symbol A. So letters are symbols, and symbols, when you put the symbols together, they spell out words. And these words pronounce expressions, which is spells, right? If I say tiger right now, what pop up in your head? Images of something, images of a tiger. If you look at a stop sign, what pops up in your head? Your education, your training on, okay, that's a stop sign. You need to stop. It's red. That means stop. Like all this flies through your head in 1 second, right? Remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So when they're saying these symbols to one another, they're saying like whole complex codes all in a second because your mind is at the speed of light. You process all of this in a second. And that's why it's important to know what these symbols are in even the scriptures, because one thing about the scripture, again, like I said in the beginning, none of this stuff is bad, man. You can't blame water for drowning somebody. It's always the energy that's behind it, because you have passive energies, energies that are kind of just hanging around, and then you have directory energies, energies that guide energies. And there's a couple of people who've been guiding things and us and powers in the wrong direction, but a lot of this stuff is really good stuff when you know how to use it for good, right? So let's check out the scripture. Since this is one of the most popular books known to man. I think it's the most sold book that they say, like the most copies ever made. Okay. So let's check out John 10:30-36 real quick. And it says, I and the Father are one. Again, his Jewish opponents picked up stones to stone him, but Jesus said to them, I have shown you many good works from the Father. For which of these do you stone me? We are not stoning you for any good work, they replied, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, claim to be God. Jesus answered them, Is it not written in your law, I have said that ye are gods? One more time. Jesus answered them, Is it not written in your law, I have said that ye are gods? All right. So what's really being said right here with this word God? Because, growing up, nobody's calling nobody, especially in this time right now, right? Nobody's calling another person God. That was considered blasphemy, just like what it says in this book. But yet Jesus is saying, what? Is it not written in your law that that's what I've called you? Here's another indication. Psalms 82, which, I think John 10:30-36 is probably like the foundation of that whole book. But Psalms 82, 1-6, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods, which is your pineal. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? It's talking to you. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. So once again, what's up with all the monotheistic view with these personal relationships? Because within this book, it's making a mention several times that there are multiple gods. And I say that because we got to be careful with this stuff that we're saying. Like we're getting put under spells of thinking that it's really only one God and you can just ignore all the rest of them. Like the truth is there's multiple gods. In fact, Jesus just called us gods, and we're all fathers of the Most High. I mean, we're all children of the Most High. Like, are you not a child of the Most High? See, the Most High is your connection to the highest point of self, which is God. That's how you talk to God. That's how you get in contact when you get to your higher self. But again, man, we have polytheism. So we already know they were worshiping other gods, right? Matter of fact, he says he's a jealous God. And what could God be jealous of? In this book, it says, I'm a jealous God. What could God be jealous of if he has everything and is everything? It can only be jealous of something else that has and is everything too, aka another God. So there's multiple mentions that there's multiple gods, but I believe that the confusion comes in from the fact that when we say this word, we sometimes boggle it up and think we're talking about like the supreme power that we come from, the thing that you really can't say. It'll be like saying all the words at one time. Like you can't do that. It'd just be too powerful, too much energy to bring down. You can't truthfully bring down the energy of God. But within reality, these words are cuts, they're divisions, and we're bringing down certain star power. But again, the supreme is all the stars. So there is a supreme power we all come from, and nobody could ever place a name on that for very specific reasons too. For very specific reasons, like it's not always good for somebody to know your name. That gives them power over you, right? So truthfully, you can never really know the power of the name of the supreme, and you barely can know the name of God. But let's keep it going, because we'll explain a little bit of that. So God is coming from a specific word. It's coming from Huta, which is Sanskrit, and they're also coming from Egypt and a couple of other places as well. Like they had different ways of saying this, because remember, God didn't just come up 700 years ago. He's been talking about this. And so keeping this going, let's break down Huta. So Huta, or God, or Gud, or Gat, same word. Huta means something in Hinduism, Sanskrit, Buddhism, Pali, Marathi, Hindi. Okay, if you want to know the exact, yeah, okay. So Dharma, Huta, one of the 5 sacrifices, the offering into fire, is called Huta. So one of the 5 sacrifices we're already dealing with. So if people keep telling you God is the only thing, it just said that God is one of the 5. So it's already saying that there's multiple, right? So let's continue to just shred the confusion behind this word and all the people who keep hiding behind the name of God and all this stuff that they keep using to basically have a field day with everyone. So the offering into fire is called Huta. So not even just the fire, like how in the Bible, every time they spoke to God, it was that flame, that burning, couldn't even look at it shining so bright. Now, God, or Huta, is the thing that is actually inside of the fire, the offering, the oblation, right? So in the Purana, Huta, according to the Siva Purana, the 7 celestial sages arrive. Accordingly, as the 7 sages said to Siva, or Shiva, formerly we had performed 3 kinds of penance. We had studied the excellent Vedas. We had made offerings in the fire. We had visited many holy centers. Thus, whatever merit we have acquired verbally, mentally, and physically, that entire merit has now accrued to us by your blessing in remembering us. A man who worships you always shall be blessed. How can that merit be properly described? The merit of those whom you yourself remember. So there's a saying that a person who remembers God, a person who remembers Allah, is worth more than 1,000 worshipers. Because if you remember, you don't even have to worship. The worship is to get you to stay connected. The worship is to get you through the ritualistic practices and all that stuff to move a certain way that connects you to God. But once you remember, you're already in the state. So keeping this going, Pali, okay, the thing sacrificed, an oblation, offered with fire, Marathi, offered with fire, burnt in oblation, also by which sacrifices have been consumed or offered, used of the fire, burnt to ashes, destroyed by fire, a thing in general, called, evoked, summoned. All this should sound so familiar. Let's break this down a little bit. So you you are the thing. Let me finish this actually. Offered as an oblation of fire, burnt as a sacrificial offering. Okay, name of Shiva. Called, summoned, invited. The act of calling. So all this stuff should sound so familiar, right? Calling upon thy name, invoking the spirit to pour out, which is the libation. That's the water, right? To pour out. That's the pouring of the energy in the water. And we have this external practice called baptism, that is supposed to be akin to what that is saying out. But what I'm saying is all this stuff is still in the practice today. But this word is from Sanskrit. That's like one of the oldest languages in the area we call India today. And back in the day, they were talking about calling upon, invoking, and pouring out, and summoning, and things being sacrificed and offered with fire. So if you don't really know what they're talking about yet, just know you are a furnace, right? Like 98.6. That's not cold blooded. There's beings on here we even call cold blooded, but no, you're something different. You're what's known as hot blooded. So you're the thing that things are getting offered into. Like when you get actually active and your body starts to heat up with activity from your cells and all that stuff, you turn into a furnace. You break down minerals. You know how hard that is? You can't just smash a quartz with your hand, but your body breaks down things like zinc and iron and all these minerals and these vitamins, all this stuff. You're the thing that is consuming and offering up things. But what you're supposed to do is supposed to be an oblation. It's supposed to be an offering up to your higher self. Meaning when you consume all this energy and stuff, you're supposed to offer that up to a higher purpose, namely yourself. And if you're born from the same what energies that everybody else is born from, meaning we all have this human body, this human story, we're all living a certain tale, then the power of love should be the thing that drives you anyway. The power of love, the power of discernment. I mean, there's multiple. I don't even want to get into all the divisions, but you're supposed to offer that up to a higher purpose, man. And then burn that up in the oblation with your organs, which is really your name. Your organs are your name, right? The hidden one, the amen. Because the thing about your organs, which are tones, right? Organs play tones, they play vibrations, which really they're a song. Like all of your organs play out a certain symphony that basically makes you. I guess why you move the way you move and do the things you do, because of the way all your organs, like if your stomach's hurting, that's the song is playing, you're going to be in the room, in the bed. That's the song you're going to be playing out. So when you on tip top shape, your name is more akin to your actions and your organs, which is your chakras. And again, this is why people don't know your the name of God, because if God is really what Jesus say, ye are God. So if God is us or you, I can't I, I can't I can't know anything about you if you what you gonna tell me? Your name Sam? All right. Who are you, Sam? Like back to Chris, like, hey, my name's Chris. All right. Or who are you, Chris? Like that don't tell you nothing about a person. That is not your name. Your name is more so your actions. Like when they say, yo, who's this? You'll say, oh, this is the guy that does this, and he used to be here, and now he's this, and now he does that. And you'll be like, oh, okay. What do you call him for short? That's when you say Chris. That's when you say this and that. But that's not really your name. And on top of that, you can't know the name of God because, for one, you can't just know what everybody has done in their life. And then, two, once you do know everything a person has done, your true name, you can actually use that against the person because your name or your attributes or your appellations, basically, they tell a person about you, and depending on what that person knows and their intentions, they can use that information against you. Like they'll know your weaknesses, right? And to top all this off, to add to it, it keeps saying Shiva. You know who Shiva is? So Shiva, let's look at it. Shiva, the auspicious one. Okay. Supreme being. Yeah. Okay, let's get it. Shiva is the supreme lord who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. Ain't that what we do? So if Huta is a epithet of Huta is Shiva, the one who creates, protects, and transforms the universe. Ain't that what we do with children, man? Isn't that what we do? We create Huta, name of Shiva. Okay, we create children. And what do we do after we create that child? We protect that child because we know that's what needs to be done after you create. And after you protect that child then goes on and transform the very world that we know by adding their very special own flavor and spin to life as we know it. Everybody has that spiral in the back of their head. Everybody has a special fingerprint. So they're supposed to leave that print on the earth. And our job as creators is to protect that creation and continue to transform the planet and the entire universe. So this is powerful stuff, man. I mean, it doesn't get no bigger than this. And the whole thing about it, man, we keep getting so personal with our God relationship and so impersonal with one another. We have to remember things like, okay, the mind, right? The mind has the imagination, and there's some things that we can imagine that have no bounds on planet Earth. They have no meaning here. It has nothing to do with the earth. Like what I'm saying is if somebody just tell you, hey, I just saw a shark walking down the street. You're going to say, okay, cool. You're going to have to show me that. I've never seen that in my life. Because we know that innately, there are certain things that naturally cannot be here. They just naturally cannot exist. So if somebody's telling you something like that, you'd have to see how that would exist here. And the imagination itself is boundless. So when we're all having this personal relationship with God, right? Nobody knows what's going on in your body or in your imagination or anything like that. So this is why you have to be careful when it comes to believing what everybody is saying, because you don't know the guys that these other people are following. They could be following some otherworldly stuff that has nothing to do with being conducive to the planet Earth, something that has nothing to do with getting us economically and socially progressive with one another. Because we're all we got as far as the planet Earth and the human race. But they keep making us just fear each other, which puts us all in our heads because now we can't go outside. Now we can't interact. Now we can't confirm our imagination because that's what we're here to do with our imagination. Confirm things on planet Earth based off of what we imagine and what we imagine them to be. And then we check back and we say, okay, cool, this doesn't work here. And then some stuff does work here. And there's some stuff that works here that are good to humans, and then there's some stuff here that actually hurts the race. And to top it all off, again with all these spells, all these mantras, all these things we keep saying, right? Look at what they've done to the language. Like they call us psycho when we're in our heads, man. But what does psycho mean? Psych is spirit, which is breath, which is the mind. So when they calling us psycho, the moment we say that, we got images of somebody crazy in our head. Well, what's so crazy about being in your mind? They want us docile. They don't want us in our minds because then we gain knowledge of self and unlock doors for ourselves. They want us to just be trained like animals, like dogs. Just listen. And again, there's nothing crazy about being in your mind, man. So if we're psycho or crazy for being in that, then that's a problem. But this is all because we've been convinced by other people's gods. And some of these gods are not nice. Remember, I'm a jealous God, so you're really supposed to be worshiping the God within, not anything else. And remember that they hide behind the name of salvation. So truthfully, the only way you can get past all of this craziness is to trust self. But in order to trust self, you have to know self. And one thing about knowing self, which ends up being God, right? God is everything, and God is within everything. So all this, God is a man, God is a woman, we got to get past all that foolishness. God comes in the shape that he chooses or she chooses. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what it is. So once you know your God, it doesn't matter what new form God chooses to come at you in as an external reminder, you'll know that it's God. Simple. That's simple. That's simple. And so, as kin to one another, we're just bystanders, man, waiting on you to unlock the greatest potential that's inside of yourself with this Sri Yantra or this machine, this body that allows you to display the attributes of God. Which is why Jesus says, okay, I've done great works, but you shall do works much greater. But the common person will deny this and say, nah, you ain't about to do nothing greater than Jesus. Well, the dude said it himself. He said, yo, I've done great works, many great works, but you will do works much greater. But this is the whole problem, man, because again, man, for ignorance of knowledge, we are destroyed. My people will be forsaken because they have disregarded to follow the law. And for them not following the law, I will forsaken them. That's what it says, right? And so we got to really get back to understanding the laws of the actual universe, man. The laws of the actual planet that we're on. Because we're here for a purpose. Like, we're not just a spirit. No matter what people want to say, no matter what people want to believe, the fact of the matter is we're in a complex system. We're in a covenant, in agreement with the physical and spiritual type of duality going on, which is why there's always problems, because what's good for the spirit sometimes ain't good for the body, and what's good for the body sometimes ain't always good for the spirit. So we're not here to just be zombies or dogs or whatever, just walking the earth and just doing physical stuff. We have to connect the spirit. But once you connect the spirit, what's done in heaven shall come down to earth, as above so below. What's done in the spirit has to descend down to the earth, man. So you got to get in touch with the spirit as well. And remember, we all come from the Supreme. There's nothing to be bickering about when it comes to that. There's nothing to argue about. Just go and get it, man. Get it in where you fit in. Place yourself amongst your own. And you'll realize that life is so much greater, man. But again, we got people who are just playing with people out here, man. And so I just wanted to kind of purge all that a little bit, because we're a little too old now to be looking at anthropomorphic stories, which is what they do to help children learn things by placing personal attributes and personalities to things that don't really have one, a human personality at least. Like when you let your child watch the show and they got the broccoli talking, like that's for the child to build some type of relationship with the broccoli. But does the broccoli talk? So once again, man, love and light. Stay balanced and beautiful, man. I hope this was really special for you, and I hope you can find some ground and some foundation after this one. If you've never heard of this stuff, if this stuff sounds confusing, just keep on listening and I'll make sense of it, because I'm here to end all the confusion, man. Like, I have so much to talk about, and you can only talk about so much in the moment, but you believe me, I'm going to purge the planet, or at least those that hear this message, of all this confusion that they're propagating to the people, man. Because we're so much better with unity, so much better when we stick together. And that takes for us to have a personal relationship with one another and not just with the spirit, you know? But love and light, man. Stay balanced and beautiful. And just remember, man, our greatest earnings in life are the connections made on the journey. So connect with one another and connect with self.